Today is the Feast of the Epiphany, which is the last official day of the Christmas season. And it's an opportunity just to reflect on what we've been reflecting on all the way through Advent into the last day here, because we need to carry some of this into the ordinary times, and then we got to carry it into the special season of Lent and Easter season, okay? So what happened? What do we experience? First, we affirmed a basic truth about our life, which is that God dwells within each one of us. You don't have to get God, you already got God. And that as we begin to appreciate that, we begin to see if He dwells within me and I begin to experience it, then I begin to start seeing the God within everybody else, that He also dwells in everybody else, you know? And then as I begin to see how much God dwells in everybody else, then I begin to see that God dwells in all of creation, you know? And that everything is touched by the very presence, the living presence of God, you know? So every year you're saying, will you please affirm this and remember it? Because the greatest struggle of all religion is forgetfulness. I forget the fact that I've been born with God within me. I don't get it at baptism, already got it. Baptism just takes me deeper into the mystery of the God that dwells within me. And I'm touched profoundly by the God who is love within me in baptism. So that's what we're looking at. And then it moves and we say, just reflect on that for 12 days, you know. And then the Epiphany comes and it proclaims that this God not only dwells within me, that this God doesn't just dwell with everybody else and of all creation, that this God has revealed to humanity a new way of being human. In other words, instead of telling us about how to be human, He said, I'm going to show you how to be human. So it really is today trying to stoke the fire inside me, this passionate fire inside me, to be able to say, I need to become fascinated, a passionate fascination with the Jesus of Nazareth and the Christ of faith. And I got to pull from the Christ of faith, which are the gospel stories. I got to somehow pull together, who is this person, Jesus the Nazarene? So it's a commitment for me to begin to start doing some serious spiritual work. And so today is almost like a pledge to saying, I promise that I will actively seek to read the Gospels, to pray with the Gospels, and to study the Gospels. Those are the three things that every Christian needs to do. Because if it's true that Jesus said, I am the light to the world, as John placed on his lips, that I am the light to the world, I'm going to show you a new way of being human. So let's look at this through this lens, the wonderful story of the wise men coming, okay? Let's just make a little adjustments on it. I always like to do that when I pray with the scripture, that these were wisdom people that came, and that were more than three. And that somehow these wisdom people, they talked to one another, and they had a sense there was something greater happening in the human story. And they gathered in a caravan and came to Bethlehem. And they had with them gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But when they finally saw what was before them, they surrendered the ways of the world. They said, here, you take the gold, you take the frankincense, and you take the myrrh. Just take this. Because to have those three items on you means that you also were people of means. So they said, we want to see something different. We want to hear something different. And so you and I, on this Feast of Epiphany, got to pray for a greater faith to be able to see, and a greater faith to be able to hear what it means to live in this human story in a whole new way. In other words, He is a light to the world. And it's quite fascinating. In the story of the three kings, there was a force and a power that wanted to not allow that experience to take place in the human story. It's the forces of darkness. In the Gospel of John, he sort of captures it really beautifully in his opening volley, where he said, we prefer darkness versus light. It's that constant tension between darkness and light. Because if you don't see and you don't hear, you don't have to do anything. But once you see, you can't unsee. Once you hear, you can't unhear. So he's saying to us, listen, look and hear what I'm doing, how I'm entering life, how I'm approaching the ups and the downs, how I'm standing in betrayal, denial, abandonment, how I'm dealing with loss, how I'm dealing with my own suffering, and even my own death and dying. I will take upon your story and show you a way to be in that story, so you could reveal to humanity, because at Pentecost, it's a proclamation. You are now the light of the world, and you are the ones who are going to be sent forth to take people who are living in darkness and show them a new way of living. What it means very practically is, you may be the only one. When a person reads your life, that may be the only gospel they read. Do you ever think about that? You are a gospel story. You're writing your chapters now. And at the end of your life, you're going to hand that gospel story over to your people and let them break that open and pray with that and study that. But in your life right now, you may be the only gospel that anyone reads. And so as you pray and read and reflect on the gospel of Jesus Christ, Jesus the Nazarene, the Christ of faith, as you read it and study it, it begins to echo, it begins to permeate, it begins to call forth a way of being in life. And the way has been set for us. If we take the Beatitudes, he said, these are the things that you need to look at, pray with, especially chapters in Matthew 5 to 8, especially the 6th chapter in the Gospel of Luke. You need to know these like the back of your hand. When I went to Israel, and I led my last pilgrimage to Israel, we took upon ourselves the study and reflection on the Beatitudes. I took 8 months, 6 to 8 months out of my life here. Not that I went away, I just built it in. So I studied the Beatitudes, read a lot, prayed a lot about them, to be able to make them part of my fiber, so I know them in my sleep. And so Jesus said, listen, yeah, you know the commandments, and the commandments was basically given to Moses to try to deal with the community that was out of control. He said, we have to have a little order in here. So he said, God, I'm having problems dealing with these people. Give me something to tell them they need to work on. And so Jesus said, that was okay, because it was based on a lot of you should nots. But I want to take these commandments to a whole nother level of living, because you could keep the commandments but not live the gospel. That's extremely important to know and to begin to realize, okay? So let's just quickly look at the Beatitudes. What are the attitudes? When I was in Israel, we had a chance to meet with the Archbishop or the Bishop of Galilee, who was from the Melkite Rite. And he was just a unique man, Archbishop Shakur. He stood in the creative tension. He was a Palestinian. He was an Israelite. He was an Israel citizen. He was a Catholic Christian. He had all these little titles, and he said, I'm not just all these titles, I'm a beloved of God, you know. And he really became an advocate for the movement of peace and justice between the Palestinians and also the Christians as well as the Jews in Israel. But here's what he said, because he was brought up on the Beatitudes by his mother especially. And he said, listen, you people in America, because They think differently than we do, which is good. He said, for you, the Beatitudes, oh, blessed is happy, happy. You're the happy, happy people. You all want to be happy, happy, happy. And he said, it's nothing to do with being happy, happy, happy. What it means, blessed, he said, from my understanding, he said, it means you're heading in the right direction to build the kingdom. So when you engage these ways of looking at life, these lenses, you're heading in the right direction. One of the things that I do when I deal with persons who are dying, I always say to them, we got work to do because their life is shrinking, and if I get them to do work, their life expands, We got work to do. We can't futz around now, feeling sorry for yourself, being self-absorbed. We got serious work to do. And those who do the work, it's amazing how the whole dying process transforms the whole experience around the bed or during their illness. And so one of the things that we have to look at are the attitudes. First is, blessed are the poor, right? What it means basically, you have a hunger and thirst for the love that's within you. The God who dwells within you. You have a hunger and thirst for that. You realize that I can't live these. I can't have these attitudes unless I am filled with this love, unless he's touching me. So the first part of Christmas, the affirmation that God dwells within me, that this God loves me, that I am the beloved of the Father, of God, is so important, because if you don't believe it, then you're living in darkness. And you're not going to do the work. And so what does it look like? The second beatitude, mourn, basically means you need to have a compassionate heart. You got to put on a compassionate heart. You got to put on Christ. Compassion. Sympathy is the front part of it, but it's a very small front part of it. Sympathy is I feel sorry for you, but there's emotional distance from me. It doesn't move me to act, Then there's empathy, where I listen well to your story, and you at least feel understood, but oftentimes it doesn't move me to act. Compassion moves me to act. So when I see someone suffering, all of a sudden, what drives me into Matthew 25, I was hungry, you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was naked, you clothed me. I was in prison, you visited me. I was sick, and you comforted me. It drives me in to say, we have to do this together. We have to work on that. And it's a proclamation. Compassion means all the gifts that God has given humanity is meant for all the people of humanity. It's not only meant for a select few, and then they slip off the crumbs off the table to the rest of the people. We have to share what we have with everyone, even people who don't deserve it. Do we deserve God's love? No. He gives us the blessings of life. He says, now go do the same. So that compassion, that first sense means when I hear the cry of the poor, when I see the suffering, I'm called to do something, to make something happen, to do it. I'm not called to sit on the sideline. The sense of then, blessed are the meek. It's a passionate commitment to nonviolence. That I will never support, I will never stand for any violence to solve any problems in life. Which means by our very nature, we are called to be pacifists, which is a very difficult stance to take. To move towards nonviolence, when you study Gandhi and you study Martin Luther King, especially in our time, what you see is they had to move towards it. It's a very frightening stance to have and embrace. But the Master told us, what I do, you're going to do. Look at his stance of nonviolence all through his life when he was constantly picked at, challenged, made fun of, put down, persecuted, whipped, everything. He never used violence in a response to any abuse he took from people. Never. So we begin first with the words of nonviolence, and then we gradually begin to the actions of nonviolence. If we're using words that are hurtful and cutting and put people down, then you're not committed to the light, the new way of being in life. So that question of nonviolence is such an important piece, because if you're not in a nonviolent stance, you can't move to the next beatitude. A hunger and thirst for justice, to make things right. to begin to look at the oppressed, the people that are under the weight of life, that are put under the weight of life by the forms and systems of humanity, that we have to begin to challenge, look at, and speak to those. That's, again, a very difficult posture. Seeking justice. We say, we're going to take justice if someone hurts us, right? We're going to sue them. But we make sure we get our justice. What about all those people in this world? How about all those millions of children who are living in camps today because of violence, because of oppression? How do we begin to look at that, face that, and deal with that, you know? It's a very difficult stance to be in. That's why, again, the first beatitude, you gotta do the work and you gotta understand that I gotta go inside to experience his passionate longing and thirsting for me. Then the question of mercy. Forgiveness, 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 forgiveness. And what does that practically mean? I am committed never to make anyone pay, or life pay, or even myself pay for anything that I did that was did to me, that was hurtful to me. I got to live in that radical sense of forgiveness. I'm not going to make anyone pay by word or action. I'm not going to use violence to make them pay, either passive or aggressively. This is what it means to put on Christ. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. And that's pretty difficult. It's pretty hard. And that leads us to places where all of a sudden we hear Jesus say, love your enemies. That's chapter 6 of Luke. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who are mistreating you. Bless those who are cursing you. You can't do that if you're a child of darkness, because your natural driving point is not God's love, but to protect myself and my own survival. Then the question of the pure of heart. What does that mean? Very simply, that I must put on love in all situations. I encourage you, every morning you get up, walk to your crucifix, put your hand on the crucifix and say, Lord, help me to be in a loving stance. Help me to be in a loving stance today, especially people I don't like. Especially people I don't like, or people that give me a hard time, or it's difficult, or they're doing whatever. Help me to be in a loving stance. Because if I don't understand what it means to be in a loving stance, then the next beatitude, blessed are the peacemakers. I can't build bridges between myself, the part of me I know and the part of me I don't know. I can't build a bridge to my shadow self. I can't build a bridge to begin to alleviate, at least to begin to look at the demons that are within me. But then I'm called to build bridges between people and build bridges between nations and countries and various things. So the question of dialogue, compromise, becomes what it's all about on your part and my part. And it's very difficult to do again, because we say we want to win. And our culture says you got to win. And now if you live this, he was very clear with us. Jesus never fudged anything. He said, if you're going to live these beatitudes, to have these attitudes, and this is your new way of being in life, the forces of darkness will insult you, persecute you, utter everything against you. And it was he brought it home so clear, Matthew, that he took the 8th and 9th beatitude to say it. So he took 2 beatitudes and he said, listen, pay attention to this. Now, it's extremely important. The systems of darkness of this world do not want you to challenge them. Pope Francis talked about economic systems, and he's been hammered, because that's the golden calf that no one can talk about. Even if you say, hey, wait a minute, greed is permeating this. Greed is permeating this. Oh no, we can't do it, you can't touch it. So when anyone says anything about the Beatitudes, right away they discredit you. I see it, I experienced it. Why do you, oh, Father Tom, you're a Democrat. So if I pro-life, I must be Republican. Please stop insulting me. For the gospel does not relate to any party. It's beyond the party. We are the conscience of the party. We are the conscience of the society. To remind them there's a new way of being in society, a new way of being in the world. It's amazing. The society wants us to keep in the bedroom, talk about birth control, talk about abortion, talk about anything, gay marriage. But let's not talk about the systems that oppress people. Let's not talk about the forms of government that really begin to separate people. Let's not talk about that. As I said, it was amazing. You know, and then they were saying it, and I'm saying, who are they? They even said, he's not even a Christian. He's a Marxist. He's a socialist. He's this, he's that. And Pope Francis said, don't worry. I'm just going to keep preaching the gospel. Because why? I got the smell of the sheep on my garment, and my shoes are dirty by being in the streets. In fact, he even brought it home to the church, where just the other day, he sent to his nuncios to tell the nuncios and also to the rectors of the seminary. He said, the way you're teaching them, you're creating little monsters. Get them out of this little conclave and get them into the streets. Let them see how people are living. Let them get their hands dirty with life and living. Don't just protect them and keep them locked up, and then they're going to come out and they're going to be holier than ever, whatever it is, and they're going to torment the people. I said, I can't believe what I'm seeing. So this is important to realize. If you begin to live the gospel, and you become the gospel that people are going to read, because you're the only one that gospel they may read. And as they read your gospel, they may say, I want to find out why you weren't. Bring me to Jesus of Nazareth or Christ Jesus. Bring me there. I want to come and see. It's a frightening burden, but it's the greatest burden of all life to be able to take this. You've been chosen from all time. This is your destiny. It's your destiny. Just quick, two little stories. George and Sheila, about 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember that accident on the Parkway. Two kids, young adults, coming home in their car, and they got in a car accident, and they died in a fiery car accident. They're only two children. The other day I was talking to a young lady. Remember last year, the family that was walking to Dunkin' Donuts, and he came by and killed the mother and dad? I talked to her. And I said, even though it's horrendously painful to both of them, horrendously painful, and you got to heal that wound that life has placed upon you, but you're called now to something in your life you can't even believe. You're called to be a wounded healer in relationship to the gospel. So you're going to touch into people's lives their pain of loss that many of us will never be able to touch into. And you're going to witness to them the power of the gospel to help them also move on with their life. So the death of your parents and the death of your children have brought you to a place in your life you have never gone yourself. But because life has brought you to that place, you got to stop futzing around. You got to stop spending time putting life on hold because you're so wounded. You got a job to do. You got a job to do. Because there are many who need you to touch in the world that only you can touch into. It's amazing. So we got a job to do. We got a job to do. No longer futzing. We got a job to do. You got a destiny and purpose. We all do. I don't have it because I have a collar. I have it because, like you, I've been baptized. And I know my God dwells within me. And I'm trying to see the God within others. I'm trying to see the God within all that is. And as I see God within others, all of a sudden I realize if he's in all of nature, everything, he's also in this piece of bread and a cup of wine. And as I take it and drink it and eat it, it affirms what's already inside of me, that he is loving me, loving everything about me, my strength, my weaknesses, my challenges, and my sin. He loves me. And I can proclaim, as you could proclaim, I am the beloved of God. Once you know it, your life changes forever.